Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I am really excited to welcome you to our 7th webinar of the year here at CADS and ALE. And we're calling it Looking Back and Pushing Forward State Budget Highlights and Advocacy Opportunities to Break New Ground for Adult Day Services. Thanks for being here. I'm Lydia Miselides, the Executive Director for the Alliance for Leadership in Education, CAD's sister nonprofit organization, and the interim executive director for CADS, California Association for Adult Day Services. I'm going to host today and facilitate our panel discussion, and we'll have plenty of time for audience participation, so please have your questions ready, pop them in the question box, and we'll get to as many as we can today. Next slide. You regular webinar attendees are familiar with this slide. This is being recorded, so I know a number of people contacted us and said, we are up to our eyeballs applying for Bridge to Recovery, so we're not going to make it today, but we will listen. So being recorded, you can listen anytime, or if you want to share with a staff person who's interested, you can certainly do that. So we are in listen-only mode, so background noise is canceled out. There is one handout. It's a very short PowerPoint today. You can grab it from the handout bar in the GoToMeeting control box to the right of your panel usually, although you can move that control box around. Just a little tip. Questions and comments, we love comments as well, can go into the question box. You're not going to be able to use chat for incoming messages. We can use it though to send messages to you, and you may get some of those today from Danielle, who's in the background helping out with questions. And then as always, we do have a survey at the end that we love to have you complete because we need your feedback so that we can plan future webinars for you. Next slide. So today we're going to do a little tiny bit of reminiscing. Some of you might remember the olden days when the start of summer meant only one thing: canceled travel plans and anxiety-filled days, weeks, and yes, even months in some years as provider cash dwindled and payrolls were not being able to be met, or bank loans had to be gotten because there was no state budget and the state could not pay bills after July 1 without a state budget. At that time, again, the olden days, legislators would get paid even though the budget was late and did not meet its statutory deadline, but staff at the legislature didn't get paid. I don't know if any of you remember. You want to put in the question box if any of you want to take a guess at when the longest budget impasse took place. What month was it when the budget was finally signed? And then bonus points if you know the year. Okay, I'm going to tell you, I don't know the year. It was the olden days, but it was September. We went past Labor Day one year. That was the worst of all the years. Well, all of that happened before voters decided, well, enough was enough. Initiative was passed to stop all that and dock legislators' pay when the budget was late. Statutory deadline is June 15th of every year. New fiscal year starts July 1, as you know. And guess what? Ever since then, budgets got passed on time. And then something I think Andrea, one of our guests today, will talk about, there's something called a budget junior bill, and those began to emerge. And so really, even though we thought that the budget would be done by June 30th and we could take a little vacation, that doesn't seem to be the case because the budget is still not complete until all those follow-up bills happen, usually in August. So maybe that's just one thing you didn't know about the state budget that might surprise you, but we have more to share today that you're going to learn about, and you're going to find out why the budget bill is the single most important policy bill that passes every year, and why you all, and we here at CADS in Sacramento need to stay engaged 12 months of the year, 12 months of the year. With advocacy. You're going to hear about some highlights of our successes, why not a lot of change is good news, actually, And you'll hear some highlights, as I said, and our most recent successes and our plans for the future, which I think is going to cause a lot of excitement among you. We are thrilled to have a panel today that can share all of this with you and more, and we'll talk about opportunities, how you can get engaged with policymakers, your local legislators, and you're going to meet some of the people that I look to for guidance and expertise in advocacy, policy, and budget. And without further ado, I'm going to, oh, we had a comment. Okay, hang on. Kathleen Pineda. August 31, okay, 209. We're going to fact check that one, Kathleen, but it was September, but I'm going to check on that year and we'll get back to everybody on that. Or maybe somebody in the meantime wants to Google that question and then you can tell us in the question box what the answer is. So we'll go to our presenters slide. And I want to introduce you first to Andrea Margolis. She is a health consultant for the Assembly Budget Committee. She is the health consultant, supports what's called Assembly Subcommittee number 1. And she began working for the legislature in 1999, starting with Senate Health Committee, so a policy committee where she was there about 5.5 years. Then she left the Capitol for about 1.5 years and advocated for children's health issues, then came back in 2007 and joined the personal staff of then Assembly Budget Chair John Laird, if any of you remember him from Santa Cruz. Great guy, then he went to Congress. In late 2008, Andrea became the health consultant for Budget Committee. So she was there for all of our turmoil and the CBAS world, covering public health, Medi-Cal, mental health, and other health-related programs and all those budget issues. She brings her policy knowledge and compassion for underserved and unrepresented communities to her budget role, and I am so happy that she's able to give some of her time today to share her insights and ideas with you. Our next panelist, there's Andrea. Say hi, Andrea. Our next panelist is Christina Voss-Hamilton, and she is the principal and owner for KBH Advocacy here in Sacramento. She's our advocate at CADS and a registered lobbyist. She has other clients, but I know we're her favorite. I got to know Christina through our work on various state level committees over many years before, there's Christina, before starting her own company. She worked for the United Domestic Workers Union as their legislative director. She is the proud daughter of immigrants, as am I, and was raised in New Jersey. Any New Jersey people out there, say hi to Christina in the question box. She earned a BA degree in political science and a master's degree in labor and industrial relations from Rutgers University. Even though her roots are in New Jersey, she now travels regularly to Florida in her role as a long-distance caregiver for her mom and dad. She lives with her hubby, school-age kids, and a puppy, Zuko, who I've only met on Zoom, but I look forward to meeting him someday. And they all keep her on her toes when she's not trying to get government to do the right thing. Kay Lee. Kay, come and show your face. She is your CADS Vice President and Chair. Hello, Kay. Chair of the Legislative Committee. I've known Kay from the time she was a wee one, growing up in her family ADHD business. And she graduated college with her master's in public health and began working in the family business, then decided to go to law school, got her JD, and then passed the bar, not just in California, but also in New York. So we're very proud of Kay's accomplishments, and she's one of our rock stars and leaders in our field. She's also chair of the Legislative Committee, as I mentioned. So she's very involved with Christina and me and all of our work. And I guess Kay, just decided she might need a backup plan if this adult day healthcare thing doesn't work out. I'm not sure, Kay, but anyway, we're glad you're with Adult Day Health still. Let's see. Kay is also a founding member of the CADS Vision team, who still meets every Monday. So I'm going to ask Renee now to come on camera. We'll give her a quick shout out. Renee doesn't really need any introduction. You know her as the CEO of TurboTar and now also TurboTar CalAIM, which I think has aged her about 10 years in the last few weeks. Renee's a fierce warrior for adult day services and the people you serve. You know, she loves data and CAD's service mission, and like Kay, grew up in the family business with her sister Sarah, who's an occupational therapist. And then Renee, what I'm so proud of Renee, helps with her two little nephews, one of whom has a developmental disability, and shares her San Diego home with her wife and 2 dogs. And do you still have your bird, Renee? I miss your bird.
I do. I have my bird Floyd. There was 2. There was the Pinks, Pink Panther and Pink Floyd, but unfortunately Pink Panther passed away. So now Floyd is.
I remember Floyd. He was talkative. So Renee's also a founding member of the Vision team. So thanks for being here, Renee. That's your panel. They're going to come on in just a minute when I'm done yakking. Next slide. I had to put this slide in here because I just love these photos, and I want to thank Kathleen Colenda with Easter Seals Southern Cal and Marianne Ratto with Camarillo Healthcare District Adult Day for sharing these photos to remind us what we do every single day, no matter how hard it is, through the pandemic, through all the trials and tribulations we all face today. This is what keeps us all going. I know those smiles just make it all worthwhile for all of us, even on our hard days. So I want to take this moment to thank you all for the work you're doing and have done and will do in the future. We know it's hard, but it's all worth it. Next slide. Why does it feel so hard some days? Well, yeah, you're not alone. I just want to validate your feelings. We did a survey of our adult day healthcare and our adult day programs recently. We found out there's about 9% centers that feel they are at risk of closing in the not immediate future, but within the year. 46% felt a lot of uncertainty about how sustainable their finances are. 91% were experiencing monthly budget deficits. Average daily attendance is still below the ideal. Payment delays have worsened. A lot of that has to do with many changes in Medi-Cal, but even our adult day programs are experiencing payment delays from some of their payors like regional centers and others. And universally, transportation is a major challenge around the state. Increased operating costs if one operates their own fleet of vehicles, not enough drivers, converter thefts have been a huge problem, and vehicles that break down. We also heard through our surveys and through talking to our Vision team and many of you, staffing shortages and trying to find workforce right now is a huge, huge challenge. And I know Andrea can confirm she hears from many, many providers in the health space and the social service space where that is a problem. So with that introduction of all of our fantastic panel, Andrea is going to kick it off first. And I'm happy to turn the microphone over to you, Andrea, for our panel, start of our panel discussion. Andrea, thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you, Lydia. And I have to say, you know, I really don't know, but I think the answer to your question about the latest budget was October of 2008. And the reason that I think that is because I got hired. I was actually supposed to start with budget committee in August of that year. And yet the budget sort of wasn't done and kept going and going, and I was brand new, so it didn't make any sense. And so I didn't end up starting until December.
Okay, we're going to fact check that for you, Andrea, but I believe you.
I would love to know.
I think that was a seminal moment in your career, so I'm gonna take that.
Well, and it was really that was really kind of the start of the Great Recession was in 2008, and so it was really utter chaos that I walked into and had to learn this job in those first 4 to 5 years. It was really chaotic and really difficult to be learning this job in that environment, but that's what happened. And in those years, in those early years for me, between 2008 and 2012, roughly, Our chair at the time, our budget committee chair, was Assembly Member Bob Blumenfield from LA. And as some of you, or all of you must know, you know, it was in 2011, I believe, was the year that the administration proposed, the administration meaning all the people who work for the governor, proposed elimination of ADHD as a statewide Medi-Cal benefit. And just want to mention that I and my, you know, fellow committee consultants and our chair, Mr. Blumenfield, we really fought and fought and fought and fought hard to protect and save ADHD, though unfortunately we failed, as you know, and you know, but from our efforts came CBAS, which was something. It was better than nothing, certainly. And so I just I want to point out that, you know, at that time, I mean, and I do think things have evolved a lot here since 2011, and I think people's understanding and appreciation for ADHD, you know, maybe somewhat better than it was then, but I'm not sure, unfortunately, I'm not sure it's hugely better. So I think there's kind of an ongoing stigma and a, you know, a lack of understanding kind of what ADHD and now and you know, frankly, having the sort of the two names, the two different programs, ADHD and CBAS, frankly adds to the confusion, and people don't know what these programs are, and they're not sure that they're you know, really healthcare per se. So it's, you know, like I said, I do think things have changed for the better, but there's sort of a long road ahead in terms of educating the Capitol community anyway about what it is that you all do, which is truly awe-inspiring work. And you know, hats off to all of you, because it's hard work and essential work and underpaid work. So thank you for what you do, and know that I want to support you in your efforts to educate the whole Capitol community, so that this industry can really thrive. So I was also here in 2019, and kind of, and the assembly, you know, I do want to just kind of pat my employers, the assembly, on the back, because I feel like we have been sort of the leading cheerleaders for ADHD and CBAS, both in 2011 when it was being eliminated, as well as in 2019 when there were Prop 56 funded supplemental payments or rate increases being discussed. And we put CBAS on the table and said this is a priority for us in terms of provider groups that would be receiving Prop 56 supplemental payments. And so I want to talk a little bit about this year, which is a somewhat unusual year, although I feel like every year is unusual here. It's just kind of the way it goes, I guess. So this year, you know, so this year we essentially had a general fund deficit in the state budget, and it was I don't know, unusual or a little strange or what have you, just coming off of the last 2 years, in which we had, you know, in 2021 and 2022, we had unprecedented surpluses. We were just like swimming in money, and it was crazy because, of course, everybody expected the opposite from the pandemic, but that's not what happened. So then we got to this year, and this year, like I said, we had a general fund deficit, and we were, as a result, you know, beginning of the year in January and kind of throughout our budget process in the spring, we were fairly pessimistic about being able to add much to the governor's budget, meaning, you know, the governor proposes a budget in January every year, which means he sort of delivers a proposed budget to the legislature. We spend 4 to 5 months, you know, from January through the end of May, essentially, or sorry, January through the beginning of May, reviewing, analyzing, evaluating that proposed budget, changing it. And then, as Lydia mentioned, we have to send a balanced budget back to the governor on June 15th. And so typically, I mean, in a year when the state has a surplus, then there are, additions in terms of funding and that reflect legislative priorities in that June 15th budget. And so this year, we were pessimistic kind of all year about being able to add anything to what the governor proposed. And in the end, we were able to add just a very modest amount of new things and new spending, very small, with the exception of, kind of the big elephant in the room this year, if you will, is something called the MCO tax. And forgive me, I don't know what you all know, and I'm sure varying levels of knowledge about this kind of stuff, but the MCO tax, for any of you who don't know, is the managed care organization tax, and it's basically a provider fee or provider quality assurance fee. There are different names for it, but we've had 5 or 6 MCO taxes in the past, so this is not new, and it's just basically a tax on a particular industry that's willing to pay the tax, because we're able to then match the revenue with federal funds within the Medi-Cal program, and then the state, so we double our money. We're able to repay the industry that's paying the tax, in this case, managed care plans, and then have additional sort of leftover revenue for whatever purpose. And this year's MCO tax is different than the prior 5 or 6 of them, in the sense that our State Department of Healthcare Services just basically was able to figure out kind of a new structure, or a new way to structure the tax that results in much larger amounts of revenue for the state. And the importance of that is just to say that in the past, the MCO tax revenue has essentially all been used just as kind of a budget balancer, meaning people will refer to it as a general fund backfill. So we had a few $billions that was just put into the Medi-Cal program, and general fund in that program was taken out and spent, throughout the budget in no particular identifiable place. So this year, given that they were able to figure out a different structure, this new MCO tax results in approximately $19 billion, which is obviously a huge amount of money. Even in California's state budget, that's a large amount of money. And the other thing about it is that, if I'm not mistaken, the state received guidance from federal government, i.e. CMS, saying you can use some of this, we're likely to approve of this, and you can use some of it for a general fund backfill, but you need to use a substantial amount of it to improve the Medi-Cal program, which is fantastic, because otherwise it would have been a feeding frenzy. And it's a feeding frenzy anyway, even in the context of Medi-Cal. But it would have been a feeding frenzy all over the budget, and we would have lost a lot of that money. So it's all going to be within the Medi-Cal program, and primarily in the form of provider rate increases. But the unfortunate and unpleasant part of our process this year was that this MCO tax and the spending plan that was agreed to was essentially kind of controlled, if you will, by a what some people refer to as a pay to play coalition of healthcare interests, generally healthcare interests that have kind of more resources, if you will. So this includes the California Medical Association, and the California Hospital Association, SEIU, and a few managed care plans, and a few others. And this coalition has threatened to take this spending plan to the ballot, which is kind of how they, I guess, gained so much control over the ultimate, agreement about how this money would be spent. And so if any sort of entity or provider type was not part of this coalition, such as ADHCs, they were not going to benefit from this spending plan. So like I said, this was really disappointing to me and a lot of other people. But that's, that's sort of the reality of this year and how this whole MCO tax played out. I do want to say though that the spending plan, there's I guess you could say an informal agreement and commitment between the administration and this coalition on the spending plan. However, it's not in any law. It was not included in any budget bill or any bill of any sort. And so arguably, nothing is sort of set in stone until it's in a bill and in a statute that's been signed by the governor. And so I want to point out that there is at least one other provider group that I happened to talk to recently, and they are sort of going ahead and making a play, quoting them, this August for a rate increase, perhaps via the MCO, or maybe not. And so I don't really know what that means, and I don't know if they'll be successful, but I don't want to discourage you all from sort of, don't make any kind of negative assumptions about what's possible or not possible at any point in time. I guess that's the message I want to give you. Anything's possible, and politics are really hard to predict. So, while this coalition and this spending plan seem kind of set in stone, this coalition could fall apart. I mean, you just never know what's going to happen here, and there are many legislators who were not happy with how this played out. And so I just want to be encouraging in that way. I don't want to sort of create expectations that aren't realistic. It's a very kind of difficult situation, I guess, to sort of be part of and to benefit from, but at the same time, anything's possible. So let me see. So I want to just talk about next year and sort of, advocacy in the state budget in general. As Lydia kind of mentioned, budget work is very much policy work. We do a lot of policy work through what are referred to as budget trailer bills, and those are just they're in most ways they are sort of the same as a regular bill or a policy bill, but they are formally tied to the budget, and they essentially implement funding that's in the budget. And the budget itself is typically referred to as the budget bill, which eventually once it's signed becomes the Budget Act. And the and as Lydia also mentioned, we have come to rely very heavily on what we call budget bill juniors. And what those are they are essentially smaller budget bills. They amend the budget bill or they amend the Budget Act. So there's sort of a whole series of budget bills and many trailer bills that implement the budget. And I mean, particularly in the ADHC space, I would say, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I would think probably your highest priority in terms of legislative work is like CBAS rates, Medi-Cal rates. And so obviously that is very much solidly in the budget arena. So, we really welcome your participation in our budget process, and many of us here really want to be supportive of this industry and this service. And I know, and others know, that ADHCs and CBAS are a cost savings for the state. But I think many people don't know that, unfortunately, and I do feel like that's one of your perhaps most promising selling points. So I just want to urge you to, focus some of your legislative and state advocacy on making sure that people understand that, if people are able to stay in their homes or stay in the community, right, and not go to a skilled nursing facility or some other type of institutional care because of programs like CBAS, that is obviously a savings for the state. And so, as I mentioned before about the MCO in general, yeah, I feel like the state budget it's fairly unpredictable. So, for example, as I kind of referenced also in 2021, when we're in the midst of the pandemic, and we really expected there to be significant deficits, right? And we started the year, I think, in January of 2021. With a very conservative budget and expecting to make cuts and so on and so forth. And then by the time we got to the summer of 2021, we had the biggest, most unprecedented surplus we've ever seen. So it's just hard to predict. And, even this year with the MCO tax, again, we do have a general fund deficit, but in the health arena, or at least in the Medi-Cal arena, we ended up with this gigantic, MCO tax, which is like I said, about $19 billion. So, not that you shouldn't, read the tea leaves and sort of be aware of what's going on and that sort of thing, but don't sort of count yourself out too early in our process, because it's a fairly unpredictable and fairly volatile process here. I can't emphasize enough, in the budget process, anybody, any industry or program or advocate who is successful in the budget process is successful because they have real legislative champions, meaning legislators who have prioritized their cause and their budget request. In the Assembly, and I think possibly in the Senate as well now, but in the Assembly for a few years now, we have stopped accepting budget requests or proposals from stakeholders and advocates, et cetera. We only accept them from members of the Assembly. And obviously, or maybe not obvious, but members of the Assembly will submit budget requests on behalf of stakeholders and advocates, which is perfectly fine. But I mention this partly because it's just important to understand that what our goal with developing and passing a state budget is that budget will reflect the priorities and values of the members of the Assembly. That's what seems appropriate to us. They were elected. And so when there is a member who not just puts their name to something, but actually makes something a priority, so they submit a budget request to fund something and they work it, meaning they have meetings with the budget committee chairs, they have meetings with legislative leadership, they have meetings with the administration, they push and they educate just like they do for the bills that they author. Those are the successful, that's what ends up, being included in our final budget. And I do think this has been lacking a bit with ADHC, at least in the last, last few years. And that's, simply a result of not enough sort of education for the members of the legislature on what the program is and what the service is and how critical it is. So I want to encourage you and urge you to get to know your legislators, invite them to your center, have meetings with them, get to know their staff, everything. And then in January, you know, reach out to them and ask them to submit budget requests on behalf of your organization. And that can include both sort of statewide requests, right? Like a Medi-Cal provider rate increase for CBAS, that's a statewide request. There's also what we call district requests. So any member can make a request for some smaller amount of money for something in their district. So that's all, you know, that's also a possibility for you know, individual ADHCs to do that. Most of the budget advocacy work goes on outside of hearings. And I just want to clarify this because, in fact, on the Assembly side, and I don't think this is true on the Senate side at this point, but I mean, particularly with all these years of having a lot of money, we have so many budget requests, proposals from members, stakeholders, et cetera, that it's just impossible to actually put them on agenda and have a public hearing of them. And so we have sort of a behind the scenes process, if you will, where we, you know, evaluate them and read them and consider them and so on and so forth. And so they're, you know, they're considered in you know, every bit as much as a proposal that's on a hearing agenda. There just isn't a hearing on it. And so there's a whole, you know, series of things that go into good advocacy that have nothing to do with the hearing. And so, you know, I usually just tell people, like, all the things that you would normally do in addition to getting ready for a hearing, you need to just do all those same things. And, you know, it's meetings with other legislators and with staff, it's meetings with the administration, it's meetings with the legislative analyst's office, it's education in your communities, and with the legislature. And so all of that needs to happen, and all of that is really much more important than a public hearing. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that, because I think people often just kind of overly focus on, well, when's the hearing, and if there's no hearing, how does this happen, or, you know, how does it get considered and so forth. So I'm happy to, you know, answer questions about that if there are any. The last thing I just want to mention is that, so sub 1 is, I think Lydia mentioned, so the Assembly Budget Committee and Senate, they're both broken up into about 5 subcommittees that, you know, consider the different major policy areas. So in the Assembly, subcommittee number 1 is on health and human services. And so our subcommittee has had the same chair for the last 7 years, but that just changed. So we have a new chair, and our new chair is Assemblywoman Dr. Akilah Weber, who's from San Diego. And I just met her for the first time this week. And so I'm just getting to know her, but I just wanted to mention that her highest priority is Medi-Cal rates. But which is great, it's great news. But having said that, I don't know how familiar she is with ADHC and CBAS. And so I think the education that I've talked about is critical. I don't know if there's a San Diego ADHC on this call or just out there. But if you're out there, and particularly if you're hearing this, you know, please get in touch with Dr. Weber's office and you know, start developing a relationship with her, because that will help you immensely. That's all I have. I will leave it at that. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Andrea. That was a graduate course in budget process and some really helpful tips, some of which just really emphasize the important role of this audience as grassroots advocates, as well as the work we do here with you in Sacramento. So I'm going to invite Christina on, and Kay, if you want to jump on too, but I thought Christina would be great opportunity right now for you to talk about kind of some reflections from what Andrea said about education, grassroots, deficit, and working through that, and then also how the work that we've done with the legislature in the past few years, especially very intensive work for the last 3 years, has also opened up some avenues for us in the regulatory space. So would love to have you do that, and Kate, love to have you weigh in. But I first have a question that, Andrea, I don't know if you have some reflections on this or not. We understand the politics behind the managed care organization tax that you described. It's a strong, big coalition that has deep pockets, as you said. We weren't part of it, and many other smaller providers were not. But the question is, could that benefit smaller providers like CBAS who contract with managed care, because they'll have an increased amount of money through this MCO tax to boost rates for these other providers, hospitals, nursing homes, et cetera. And could that benefit us in any way, because they will see some increases, the managed care plans will, in their rate structures to absorb these increases going through? Or do you feel like it's going to be still pretty focused on just the priorities now that we're like OBGYN and a couple of other more primary health care providers? So just curious if you had some thoughts on that impact as it kind of trickles
Right.
down the line.
Right. Well, so I guess unfortunately, I mean, so what was agreed to is a sort of a spending plan that is based on providers.
Okay.
So yeah, obviously, like as you said, I mean, that money will flow through managed care plans to the providers, but the specific provider types have been, agreed to. So in other words, it's not a case where there'll be, this increase in funding that goes to managed care and they can sort of decide how to spend it. And so, the spending plan is focused on primary care and specialty care, emergency and inpatient services, behavioral health, like inpatient services, and a small amount for workforce programs. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you for that. No, that it's all complicated. So Christina, I know you definitely have some thoughts you want to share reflecting on what Andrea's talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me thank Andrea first for coming on and sharing extremely wise and valuable remarks. And I just want folks who are listening to understand how valuable this information is, because you all know better than I do how alienating sometimes and intimidating access to government can be, and understanding how these processes work, and having someone who understands them so intimately come and share not just the updates, but some of the behind the scenes. You can't put, it's invaluable, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because what we need to do is take that information and we've got to learn and keep going. And my main takeaway from what Andrea said is the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I mean, that's the essence of advocacy, is to be the squeakiest wheel you possibly can. And I think CADS has done some amazing work in the last several years, like you said, Lydia. Last year, thanks to people like Andrea and leadership from the Assembly, the Senate, and the Governor's Office, we were able to get a budget allocation that was a lot of money and is now, potentially getting ready to go out the door, which is like, oh my gosh, we've made it. The day that first check goes out, we will all do a dance and have a party. And all of that was a result of advocacy, being a squeaky wheel, being relentless, showing up, not just when you need something, all year long, educating on what these services are, why they're important. You have to remember, people like the budget chairs and the leadership and all of these legislators, they are surrounded by a bazillion other programs and services and populations and problems, and to expect that they understand why CBAS rates need to increase is just, it's not realistic. And you almost can't blame them. California is a huge state. It's very complicated. Most of them specialize in certain areas. So you have, certain health care focused legislators, but if, other ones are doing other things, we've got any number of crises happening at any one time in the state. And so the takeaway is the work that CADS has been doing has become very fruitful in the last several years. Not just speaking of advocacy, I have someone from the administration calling right now, but I will call back later. The work that we did, not just in obtaining the budget funding last year, which is more traditional lobbying you could imagine, but the work that we've done this year, as I was explaining earlier today to the board, with what's called regulatory lobbying, which is the lobbying that you do for internally with the department, with healthcare services, with Department of Aging, with the Department of Public Health. This program intersects with a lot of different departments. And then over all of that is the umbrella of Health and Human Services Agency. And it was because of this persistent presence in education around CBAS problems and adult day service program problems that we were able to finally call attention to the fact that these rates by 4 of these big plans were not restored to the full Medicare fee-for-service rate as the legislature had intended it to happen several years ago. And so that wasn't traditional legislation, or it wasn't a budget request, but it was regulatory lobbying. And that is now resulting in these reimbursement checks coming in. So there is tangible value that comes out of these efforts. And, we, Andrea, are going to be another provider group that is going to be launching a campaign to convince the administration this summer, this fall, to include some provider rate increases, hopefully, in the governor's proposal to the legislature, which comes out in January. And we know that's very hard. And we know that next year is projected to be another budget deficit year. And I don't think we're pretending that this is some kind of slam dunk, but we're starting, because the MCO tax and all of the things that you highlighted, Andrea, have created an opening in the dialogue in the administration and in the legislature around Medi-Cal rates in general, and service problems and lack of access that results when you don't pay people enough to be able to run a business and keep their doors open. So, the takeaway for me is, even though we aren't one of the people on the list to get MCO tax revenue, it is still an open conversation. Like you said, Andrea, things can change at any moment, at any time. Something could happen, and all of a sudden the political winds blow a different direction, and we've got to be ready for that. And so we're going to continue to do the work that we're doing. And I just, again, appreciate you coming and just being that sort of voice coming down from Sacramento. Hey, folks, this is what has been happening. This is what we're up to. And we have supporters inside that want to see the right thing happen for these programs. And so I want to thank you for that as well.
Thank you, Christina.
Thanks, Christina. And we do have a really strong provider community in San Diego, Andrea. So I have a feeling we've already got some relationships started with Dr. Weber, but we will definitely be making sure that that happens and gets strengthened along the way. So Kay, do you have some additional reflections you'd like to share as well? And
yeah, so thank you so much, Andrea and Christina. Like Lydia said, graduate level, just quick and dirty introduction into the complexities of the legislative budget process and the regulatory lobbying. And I think another really important point that I just want to make, which has enabled us to even get to this point of having these really productive conversations and even trying to pursue something that felt like a shot at the moon before in the past, of talking about rates and talking about why rates matter in terms of access to services and quality care, is because of the kind of years-long effort of continuing to collaborate with the state, and that's due to the effort of CATS and the provider community. An example that comes to mind is the Vision team, for example, which was originally the crisis team that came up right when the pandemic hit, as an effort to not only educate providers, but also to work with the state, with agencies, California Department of Public Health, the Department of Aging, agency, and just come up with solutions as to how the various agencies and regulators can work with providers to really continue to provide services in the best possible manner in the midst of a crisis. And I think over time, those relationships have really blossomed into long-lasting, dialogue and trust, which allows people to talk frankly and candidly about the struggles that continue on to this day and how they tie into historic rates that haven't changed. And I think just all of those components put together has really put us in a place in which these conversations can be productive rather than just responsive to a crisis and once that crisis goes away, the conversation also goes away. I think it's gone to a point where we can go beyond that. And that's by no means a small feat. And I think it really is thanks to the efforts of CADS, of the CADS team, including Lydia, as well as Christine and her really Herculean efforts over the past few years, with Bridge to Recovery being one example of, I think, the legislature showing their trust and in the CBAS and ADP community to use these funds wisely and productively for our participant communities.
Yeah, very nicely said. So I do want to say, and we're going to sort of wrap up this segment, move to a couple of other budget highlights, and then I'm going to ask Renee to join us as well. But we are, as Christina said, we are continuing to work within the administration right now to make the case for why, and the survey results that I displayed earlier that you guys, many of you submitted to us, have helped tremendously to document the stressors that you're under right now. So we have some small groups assembling from the board of directors and others to put together a short paper that we're going to be presenting to the administration, starting with the Department of Healthcare Services and then others. So starting internally, like Christina said, see what we can get with probably some different ideas. So everything from relatively easy to really complicated, like the managed care tax, which could be a possibility for our community, but trust me, it is really complicated. You have to have provider buy-in. It's a longer range project, but we're not taking it off the table. Provider taxes are a thing that CMS allows. So from relatively, like, can there be a simple cost of living adjustment that's built in somehow, then to something more complicated with quality improvement to other things. So that's what work is underway right now at this very minute. And we had some comments about, what do you need us to do? We will let you know. Renee's going to tell you what you can do right now to help us out, but we will let you know. We're still doing all that background assembly of data, looking at cost of living, looking at the cost of doing business, and so on and so forth. So just be aware, that's our work right now, kind of behind the scenes. Yes, it's been over 12 years. We know some of you are getting payments for that 10% back pay, so yay. That was fantastic news. We're continuing. We have a meeting coming up in 2 weeks with the department, as a matter of fact, to talk about this again, and we'll keep at it. And we'll start the conversation about next year really soon. Let's see. Discussions about it. Yes, there's a lot of ideas, Manoush, about different things, geographic adders, Some people have talked about transportation, in or out. Is it an adder? I just talked to a colleague, I think Massachusetts. Transportation is basically an add-on to the rate. So if the entity provides it themselves, they get additional funding and so on. So we're gathering data from other states. We also know VA has a published rate chart for the whole United States, and their rates are significantly higher than what Medi-Cal pays. So those are the kind of data points we're gathering. Again, we'll let you guys know what you need to do. So yes, thank you for that, Manoush. There's a lot of ideas where we can kind of nibble around the edges and make some adjustments. Let's see.
Lydia.
Yes.
Lydia, can I mention, kind of related to this issue? I wanted to just put out there that, and you all may know this, but you know, the managed care rates are at the discretion of the managed care plans, and should, you know, in other words, they have the option to increase rates if that's what they want to do for ADHC or CBAS. And then, you know, those increased costs will eventually get incorporated into the cost reports that they send to the state, and then you know, it's reflected in their capitation payments and rates in the long term. But in my experience, a lot of health plans don't know this, or they pretend to don't know it, that they don't know it. I'm not sure which it is.
Yeah.
But we did have a situation a few years ago. It was before the pandemic, so I don't remember exactly which year. But there were, I think, maybe 4 ADHCs in San Francisco that you know, came to the legislature for help, and we just kind of facilitated a conversation with the San Francisco Health Plan, which ultimately, after many conversations, sort of got on board with this idea, and they increased the rates. I mean, it took a lot of conversation and a lot of, you know, sort of education of the health plan. But anyway, just something to keep in mind, that is, it's not, I'm sure it's not easy, but it is another possibility out there for,
Yes.
you know, a path to go down to get increased rates.
You are absolutely correct, Andrea. And as a matter of fact, some of the managed care plans, and we notice it a little more in the county organized health systems, Andrea, have bumped rates up several times over the last decade. And we've also been able to provide technical support to some of our centers in areas where there maybe aren't a ton of centers, to make the case, to make the fiscal case and the programmatic case for increases. And we've had a little bit of success there. But it's extremely labor intensive, as you just said. And we kind of come to the legislature last after we've tried other things, but I really appreciate you reminding us that sometimes just that little conversation can be helpful. So thank you for that. So let's see. I want to look at, see if there's some other comments, and then see if Kay and Christina want to say anything else, and we're going to go bring Renee into the conversation and let Andrea go in a little bit. Why isn't it clear to the overall Medi-Cal system that providers can't provide services year after year at rates set years before? So it's kind of like cost of living point. Is the crux of the matter convincing them, meaning the Medi-Cal plans or others, I guess, of the need for a rate increase by selling them on the value? So in other words, is the argument about inflation and no change in regulatory requirements. In other words, even more regulatory requirements have been imposed on many providers like us. In and of itself, is that a persuasive argument, or along with that, do you also have to really demonstrate the value as well? So Andrea, do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you have to demonstrate the value, particularly with something like ADHD, like I talked about. I do think there's a lot of misunderstanding or just, you know, lack of understanding about what it is and its value, and so it's sort of a chronic challenge for all of you. And I guess I think, issues around increased regulation as well as inflation and so forth. I mean, those are things that kind of plague the entire healthcare industry.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, there's certainly part of the overall picture that you all, and the overall landscape that you all are dealing with. But I don't think those issues alone will kind of sell a rate increase.
Great. Thanks for that question, Diana. Thanks, Andrea, for that as well. We got to kind of put the whole picture together is what you're saying. And you know what I think is really great right now, you guys, in all my years, because I'm old now, I've grown up with this whole industry and community over the years, is that there's more research going on now in our field across the country. And we've contributed to some of that research here in California, and I'm proud of that. So I'm wondering if being able to sort of crystallize and synthesize some relevant research that is published, peer-reviewed research, does that resonate with legislators, or is that just like a little too far, too academic, too far afield? What do you think, Andrea?
I mean, it does in sort of in your overall messaging, right? I mean, it gives credibility and persuasiveness to what you're bringing to the table. But mainly they're interested in, who are my constituents and what are the important services in my district, and have they come to me and shared with me who they are and what they do and why they, what they need.
Okay. That makes sense. So I think what we should do next, everyone, and Andrea, if you need to leave, you're more than welcome to, and we're going to thank you from the bottom of our heart, as we've all have, and we've got some appreciations in the comment box as well from the audience, because I want to have Christina and Kay talk a little bit about grassroots, and then Renee can come on, and we're going to talk to you guys about what we need to tee up success for next year, whatever form that takes, whether it's continuing building blocks or whatever. We can't predict right now, but we do need everybody's help, and we're going to give you some ideas of how you can help.
Thank you. If I can just say thank you, Lydia, and thanks to all of you. And I really look forward to continuing to work with you all in, over the summer, fall, next year, et cetera. Appreciate it.
We'll be here, Andrea, and we appreciate your openness. You're always open to conversations with us. Greatly appreciated. So some more comments from the audience saying thank you, Andrea. Bye. So Renee, you might want to join us now too. Christina, you are so good at talking about grassroots, and you've done pitches and webinars and lots of things with our group before to talk about this. So what I'd love for you to do is talk a little bit about what we need folks to do over the summer and the fall. And Renee, Dr. Weber, San Diego. So we're going to pull our little San Diego group together. If anyone else here is from San Diego, you'll be hearing from us. We'll gather folks together and have a chat. But yeah, I'd love to have you, tell folks what would be helpful right now, because some folks want to know, what can we do like right now while we're working on this behind the scenes stuff?
Yeah, so that's the question of the hour, right? What do we do about all of this information? What do we do with it? So the way to think about this, let's take a 10,000 foot view, right? Let's zoom out. When you're talking about making major policy changes, moving something big in government, you generally have to have one of two things, or perhaps both, right? You need to have some deep pockets, which, as we know from the coalition that Andrew was talking about, they clearly had some deep pockets, those organizations. Or you have to have a deep footprint in the community and a mobilization of a significant number of voters who you can activate, who are willing to follow your direction on what it is that you need them to do. Now, if you have a little bit of both, boy, you can conquer the world, but you don't need money in the traditional political contribution way. Is it helpful? Yes, let's be real. But it doesn't mean that you give up and you go home because you don't have it, because there's a number of other things that you can do to leverage the resources you do have. And one of the number one things, actually, CADS has two major things going for it. One is a long-standing history of advocacy in Sacramento. There's a profound sense of trust that it is an organization that does not make things up, that doesn't, speak without integrity, that doesn't, say one thing to one person and another thing to another one. There's a tremendous amount of respect for the name of the association and the work that it's been, done for years. Master Plan for Aging, I mean, going back forever, right? Defending, creating a new CVAS program when they eliminated adult, day healthcare. So that's a big deal. And we are continuing to build that and think about that as more of the insider stuff. The other thing that CADS has that is a huge resource to leverage is a footprint around the state that is the proximity of communities and family members that are, that come around your center. So it's not just your center with your staff and your participants, it's all of the people that those people impact, and consider it like a web of influence, right? So what CADS has is centers all around the state that have themselves built trust and long-standing reputations in the community. And what we can do is leverage the existing relationships you already have to activate those networks to start getting involved and taking part in actions that come down. Hey, this hearing is happening. We need witnesses. We need people who are willing to do lobby visits. We need people who maybe they don't want to talk to anybody, but they're really willing to write a letter or take a picture or whatever. So the work that the centers on the ground can do is huge, and none of it is possible in Sacramento without all of those things. So I want to say, make sure that we have your participant information, that we have your contact information, I should say, that we know how to reach you when there are actions happening that we need you to take part in. And in fact, Danielle, if you want to maybe put into the chat where folks can sign up for the CADS email list, the newsletter, whatever it is that you want to have folks send their contact info to. The other thing clearly is becoming a member of CADS, because CADS cannot do what it has the potential to do without significant number of centers becoming members and supporting the work of the organization. So, just off the top of my head, those are two steps you can do today that you can, what can I do? Those are two things you can do today. And then volunteering whatever time that you have. If we don't have a way to contact you, we can't give you opportunities to volunteer. So let's start with making sure we know how to contact you. Let's start with making sure you become a member if you're not. Whatever your status is, reach out to the organization and say, this is who I am, this is what I can do. Even if you are, maybe you're not a center operator, but you are a staff member. You as a staff person can exercise your own, ability to contact people and do things. What these legislators care about, as Andrea said before she left, they want to hear from constituents. So us lobbying, for example, Dr. Weber, who's based in, I want to say I know what part of San Diego, but it's totally escaping me right now. Chula Vista, maybe not. Dr. Weber, who's based in, this district in San Diego, if she's not hearing from people in her district, she's gonna not be as motivated, right? She might do the right thing because she believes in the value in general, but these people respond to constituent outreach and constituent requests, and signing up to do things like requesting just a visit and a meeting with your legislator in the district is a simple thing that you can do to start the ball rolling. And I'll pass it to my friend Renee, because she's gonna have all sorts of other exciting things to say.
And I just want to say, Christina, any of you that want to get some visits going now, and we can give you some talking points, We can help you set that up. So just contact us here at CADS. We will help you and coach you through that. It's not that hard. Sometimes a little scary to start if you've never done it before, but honestly, especially even if you can get staff there, they love the visits, and you don't understand what you guys do, whether you're ADP or ADHC, till you get there and you see it, you talk to people, you feel it. So it's super, super important because of what Andrea said. People don't understand this model because even though it's 40 years old, it's like on the cutting edge still of what everyone's talking about, team-based care and so on. So let us know and we will coach you through, but we gotta get started. I will pull the San Diego group together, Renee, so let your mom know.
Sounds good.
Yeah, Renee, and then Kay, jump in too. Your thoughts as CADS, longtime CADS members who have the microphone today.
Well, I have to say, this is actually one of my most favorite meetings that we do every year because we always talk about the budget either right before it's finished or right after. And it's a great time to recap and see what CADS and CADS members have been doing for the last year. And last year, I talked to y'all on return on investment and all the work we had done to get where we are. And this year, it's almost ironic because we are seeing such low attendance today in this webinar precisely because of the work that CADS did on the Bridge to Recovery grant. And that's where most of you are right now, locked in a room or in a closet or in your bathroom, feverishly writing a grant. Or maybe that's just what I'm going to be doing later. And you're doing that, and you all know the limitations on that grant. And for those of you that donated money to CADS last year to get all of these efforts happening, that's a pretty darn good return on investment, that we were able to secure such a high total for the first tier round of funding for the Bridge to Recovery grant. Hopefully, we don't know yet, there may be some more openings to write more grants if there's money left over. And the second thing that is so exciting to report is for many years, many of you have been calling CADS, you've been calling me and telling me, why aren't we getting paid the full Medi-Cal rate, even though Prop 56 restored that rate? And I have to tell you that advocacy that was really a collaborative effort, CDA was involved, Lydia. I mean, I have to say, the hardest working retired person I've ever met in my life, who we're so lucky to have her, and I personally feel blessed to be able to learn from her every day since she came back. We now have been seeing payments for catching up the last 3 years. And this is huge because I could not tell you this last year. I couldn't tell you that you're going to be getting big checks for the last 3 years, especially all of you folks in Los Angeles, that, you know, and San Diego, that we were subject to that 10% reduction. And we're really hoping that Prop 56 would help us. We're finally seeing money, and I have to tell you, it warms my heart because I get to see it every day when I'm looking at remittance advice. So I see that you're getting 10% back already. We are starting to go health plan by health plan, just as Christina said, and working with the administration, and that's amazing. We're seeing results from all of the work that we're doing, albeit they're slow. Because I like to do things really, really, really fast. But, you know, within 1 year to say that we have gotten these, the Bridge to, you know, we're going to start seeing dollars with Bridge to Recovery, and we're getting reimbursement, like for this 10%. These were all the first baby steps that we spoke about last year, that needed to get us to the place where we can talk about, okay, now that we've got this, you know, we've caught up with the full Medi-Cal rate, let's talk about where it really should be at this point. And that's because of you guys and your support. And I wish that there were more of you on right now, because as you know, I'm going to ask you for your money again this year. And I'm going to give mine, and we've already had a lot of us donate our time and money, and Danielle will tell you something exciting about a big donation we received from Vision Team member today. But all of this work it takes a lot of time. So I know you guys are getting checks right now. I see them. I've been getting them. Invest in us again. Let's continue the investment, because we need these funds. We need Lydia to go back to ALE once, CADS gets, an ED. We need all hands on deck. This is, your efforts are paying off. The continued growth of CBAS with ERS, with TAS during the pandemic, all of that is a result of the efforts of CADS. So like I always say, we need you. We need you to continue this. And we know that all of you on the phone right now are super committed. We know that there's a lot of folks that aren't on the phone that don't understand the value that CADS brings. I'm not quite sure how, because, I've been part of this organization since the day I started in adult day services. But we need a little fundraising effort so we can keep going. And so I don't know, Danielle or Lydia, anybody want to announce the absolutely phenomenal donation that we got by our friend Richard from the Vision Team?
Oh yeah, I can do that. So Richard Lee in Los Angeles, who is part of the Vision Team, Beverly Adult Day Healthcare, who by the way is on an ERS public emergency pause right now. So in the midst of all that, he pledged today $3,000 towards our advocacy fund. That keeps Christina working with us. And for next year, I want to support Christina and all you guys in the policy realm. And has pledged another $3,000 for ALE to support our work there. So thank you so much to Richard. He's not on the call today because he's in emergency land right now, but thank you. So we have one pledge to kind of kick things off, and we know a lot of you are still suffering financially. Anything that you can do right now to contribute will be so helpful. There will be more opportunities coming forward. Danielle can push the links to our donation page too on our website to you guys in the chat box if you want to look there.
It's very easy. You don't have to write a check. You can just literally click on the link and donate. And again, remember, this is return on investment. We are CADS is delivering all the things that we talked about last year, and we want to continue delivering and working together. But all of that work takes a significant amount of money and efforts. This year, another exciting thing that happened is we now have DHCS on our Vision Team meetings every 2 weeks, which is amazing because we are getting even more visibility and a lot more collaboration from all of our regulatory bodies, and it's just very exciting. I think that we always have and still do suffer from a lack of visibility, but the progress that has been made in the last year has been tremendous, and we've all gone through a lot since the last year. Now, I am not going to get off of this call without at least 5 pledges, because I have to tell you, I am running here on 2 hours of sleep. I am in Chicago at a different conference for my nephew, and I am here on the phone with you because I'm pumped. I'm jazzed because of all the things that we're doing. And I see so many lights at the end of these tunnels. So I'm asking you, I know that I know almost every single one of you on this attendee list pretty intimately, and I'm asking you to help contribute to this because I know you're going to benefit from this. And I see the benefit in the checks today. I'm literally seeing them every day. I'll just say it, HealthNet, one of our managed care plans, is almost completely up to date with repayments for the 10% reduction. I mean, that's freaking amazing. About 6 months ago, they were about 2 years behind, and that's how fast our advocacy worked. We're almost completely caught up, and that's amazing. So if any of you are unaware about this payback, please jump on your managed care plans provider portals and take a look, because you've been paid back for claims for the last 3 years. And that's pretty freaking amazing. So if you could even share a minutia, a fraction of that with CADS for the work that it does, that we all do together. And I'm not asking you to do anything that I'm not doing and that I wouldn't do. Every time we have these campaigns, all of us are donating. It's not. So I'm just gonna start it out because I don't see anybody saying anything here, and it's hurting my little heart.
Kathleen Pineda Hernandez is looking for the link, which
woo! All right.
Kathleen, hi Kathleen. I have a feeling she's gonna fill out some papers or donate.
I'll match $1,000 to the first person.
Ooh, baby.
Who's gonna take me on? I'm waiting.
If anyone wants to raise their hand and say something too, give us a holler, raise your hand, and I'll keep my eye open for you.
Yes, please say something. Do we have to do the link, or can we post? If you tell me, then I am going to take that as a virtual pinky swear that you will be donating, and I will call you out and tell everybody how amazing and wonderful and beautiful you are and how appreciative we are of you.
Just
Heck
put
yeah.
Okay, Mona, $500.
Yeah, 500 from Laguna from Mona, pinky swear.
That's awesome.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much, Mona. I appreciate it. All right.
Mona just joined our legislative committee, right, Mona? So we're putting her to work too. So money and work. We'll take either one.
Heck yeah.
Or work or both.
And Mona is amazing. So Mona on the legislative committee is like, that's awesome. That's a dream right there. I'm still waiting to match my $1,000. Is anybody going to take me up on that offer? I feel like, you know, it's a win-win here. I mean, I know we don't have too many attendees, but I will, Renee. You will, Mona.
What?
Awesome. Let's go 1,000. All right. 1,000 for Mona,
Okay.
1,000 for Renee.
We got 2. All right. Awesome.
All right.
Thank you, Renee.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, I'm really hoping that some of you will chime in here and let us know that you will help. It's definitely really hard work and expensive work. And many of us are, you know, we're counting on you. So tell us we did a good job. Aw.
Nikki, you're a great, Renee and Lydia. Oh, thank you. Well, so is a team effort.
Heck yeah, this is a group.
The board, everyone, you guys are all awesome. So thank you, you guys. We really appreciate your being here today. We know there's a lot going on.
Yeah. Maybe we will revisit you all after the Bridge to Recovery grant goes away, because I understand, I have to tell you. I mean, I'm partially comatose right now. This is, yeah.
Yeah, I told everyone, I think before you came on, that Botar's probably aged you, Cal Lame has probably aged you about 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, we're going to have more opportunities. You can go online. I think maybe Danny has to look at the form. Somebody said they used it and couldn't input credit card info. You can also send a check. We still take checks. Saves us credit card fees. So we're happy to take any donations, you guys. And we'll give you more opportunity as things settle a little bit for you this summer. We'll have another opportunity in the fall and also at conference. But we'd sure love to be able to budget and know what we have next year, so we can keep Christina going. I will be happy to contribute some time next year. I just can't do it for free right now. And we'll keep pushing forward. We've got a lot to do and some really good stuff. Hard work, but good stuff. And it just takes people and it takes a little bit of cash.
Absolutely. So, and please talk to your friends in ADHC that are non-members, and let them know about the 10%. Because
Danielle, go ahead and go to the other slide. We've got a special going on right now for membership, and that'll get folks the year-end discount. So yeah, if we can put that up there. So this is a great time if you know any colleagues that are not yet members, they've been thinking about it, need to just help a little push over the edge, please let them know. It's a great time to join. They'll get a discount for conference. We're going to do a 3-day conference this year, everybody. We've got another slide coming up on that at the end. And we've got already some fantastic sessions. You can add money to your Bridge to Recovery grant for attendance at the CADS conference and travel. So if you haven't been able to get staff there before because of the cost, that's certainly an opportunity. You could consider getting that into your budget as well.
I have some good news, guys.
What is it?
I just got a text from the amazing, my second mom, Nell Pineda from Home Avenue Adult Day Healthcare Center. And she's driving right now and unable to type on her phone, but she would like to pledge $1,000 from Home Avenue Adult Day Healthcare. I have to say, Nell, you just made my day. I was starting to feel really, really sad. Thank you so much for that. Every time we do this, you pledge and you show how committed you are to this work. And
thank you, Nell.
Thank you, Nell. Thank you. If you hear us, I'll respond to you on my phone, but I actually just saw it on my watch, which is very too small to type. Does anybody actually do that?
No.
All right.
All right. Well, I think we're winding down, you guys. We're right at the hour. So again, thank you, Danielle. If you would go to the last slide. Go, Mom. Okay, Kathleen says, thanks, Mom. Next slide, Danielle, and we'll wrap things up for today. So I want to thank Kay, our fearless chair of legislative committee and my co-writer in crime. We're going to keep working on some papers. Renee, the fabulous Renee, always thank you, Renee, and all your hard work on CalAIM has been just phenomenal. We're going to talk about CalAIM at the conference, ERS. We're going to have CDA there, you guys, managed care. It's going to be awesome. So please make plans to come. All right, Christina's running. Next slide. Okay, there's our slides. So here we go. Save the dates will start getting pushed out by Danielle. And don't miss future announcements about speakers, about sessions. We probably won't have the whole conference ready till early September. We have hired a new education director. Hot news off the press, everybody. Those of you who stayed late, you get that news ahead of everybody else. And so we're super excited about our second in-person conference since COVID. So that's it from us over here. Kay, thanks again. Renee, hope you guys got something out of our conversation today and were inspired. We always want to be realistic with you guys, but always give you some hope because we've done amazing things together and we need every single one of you to, to help out so that we can advance our community and do the work we need to do for those people that you care for and support every single day. So thanks, everyone. Please stay safe. COVID might be popping up again, so please stay safe, stay cool. Check on your neighbors, check on your participants over this weekend, especially. It'll be hot, hot, hot. So take care, everyone. Stay healthy, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.